Hey YouTube, what is up? This is Cody on the Real Sports Talk, bringing you the post-race video for the Busch Shootout. After a great race, it was really exciting. The pack racing is back. The two-car tandem is not as effective as it was in the past year or so. It was basically a show of staying off the person's left rear. All the cautions that were brought out were because of people getting into the left rear quarter panel on the back end of other people's cars. Now, drivers are going to have to make that adjustment as we move forward to Daytona and the Daytona 500 and the Gatorade Duels next week. Qualifying starts tomorrow for the big race, and also next week are the truck race at Daytona, which is great to watch if you get an opportunity to watch that, and also the Nationwide Series race. But anyway, there were several wrecks in this race. David Reagan and Paul Menard got together early, and that took out a couple guys that I was looking forward to seeing personally, like Michael Waltrip, who is really good at this pack racing, and he was really excited to get into this, and also Casey Kane, who I was eager to see how he'd do with his new team with Hendrick and see if he'd be able to run up front. And then another thing was with the radio communication. NASCAR taking that away was a big step in, I believe, the wrong direction. The radio communication, taking that away only causes more wrecks. I don't think it prevents tandem drafting because the guys are going to do what they want to do. And that was the case in the wreck with Clint Bowyer and Martin Truex, the two new teammates at Michael Waltrip Racing. They really... Clint Bowyer, just like in practice yesterday with Kurt Busch and Tony Stewart, Clint Bowyer went to make a move on the outside, and Truex turned him right into the infield because he was on his left rear and couldn't react quick enough to get squared up on his bumper and effectively bump draft him. So that's something that I think NASCAR made a mistake in doing, but I can see why they did it. But it's not necessarily working the way they thought it would, or the way they hoped it would. I guess it is effective to some degree because drivers won't be as aggressive, but they're going to do what they need to do to get that victory at the super speedway, and that's to push it as far as they can. And the biggest wreck of the night was another case of, well, the wreck that took out the most cars, I should say, not necessarily the biggest. One of the biggest wrecks of the night was the wreck with Marcos Ambrose and Joey Logano. Marcos Ambrose got into that left rear and turned Joey Logano around, and that took out probably 2 or 3 of the fastest cars of the night, and those were Joey Logano, Marcos Ambrose. Ambrose actually did not wreck. He was actually there at the end. He got around it after he tapped Logano. But Kevin Harvick, who I said in my pre-race video was really strong all night, he got taken out. Martin Truex, who was showing some real muscle and getting up toward the front, was taken out in that wreck. And also Dale Jr. was taken out in that wreck. And that was something that took out quite a few cars, but the racing was pretty exciting overall tonight. And Jimmy Johnson got into the back of Kyle Busch in the race, and he saved it once, and he was completely sideways. It was an amazing save, and I didn't think he could top it, to be honest. Just the fact that he was in the race, I think, was a great accomplishment for him at that point. So he saved that. Everyone thought there was going to be a caution. He was going to wreck. He was good. He did the Kyle Busch thing, straightened it out, just kept on going. He actually led the pack then that he was in up to the lead pack after the pack separated after the wreck, and they cruised back up there. And so that wasn't a caution, but it was a spectacular wreck to watch because there were sparks flying as he hit the apron, and it was just shredding his side skirts and fenders as he made the transition from the track to the apron onto the flat. Then with 2 to go, it was go time, and everyone was trying to get going. Kyle Busch, who just was in that wreck, it was a little while after that, but the wreck I just explained, he was in there, he cut down in front of Jeff Gordon into second place, and Gordon had a plan with Jimmy Johnson to get going with 3 to go, so he was getting antsy. He needed to move Kyle Busch out of the way, move him up the track, and he got into that left rear just trying to punch him out of the way, and It caused a big wreck. Busch saved it again after getting sideways. It was almost identical to the wreck he had earlier in the other turn with Jimmie Johnson, but Busch saved it, and regardless, Jeff Gordon went up, tagged Kurt Busch, who had someone above him, and it set off a huge wreck. Gordon was on his driver's side for probably 1,000 feet or so on his side, and then he rolled it a few times in the infield and right in front of pit row entrance. But he got out okay. Everyone was okay in this race after all the wrecks. And then the restart happened, and Kyle Busch, he was there with the two-car tandem, pushing Tony Stewart out in front, and he got by him. And it was quite amusing to watch because Kyle Busch was dragging his fenders from the wreck with Gordon, and so there were sparks flying out from under his car as he was pushing Tony Stewart around the racetrack, and he timed it perfectly, got out to his Stewart's outside, and won the race by 100th of a second. So it was an exciting finish, exciting race, action-packed, 75 laps, that's for sure. But there were only, on that final restart in which Kyle Busch won the race, there were only 12 cars in the front pack, and Jimmie Johnson actually went back out. He probably wasn't fit to be running, but he went back out just in case there was a wreck that took out the other 11 cars in there. He got his crew to just get him out there and make him able to run around the track just in case something crazy happened. But it didn't, and Kyle Busch was your winner after wrecking twice on the track, and that guy has some serious driving talent. It's unbelievable. I don't necessarily approve of the way he acts, but I do respect him as a race car driver for sure. He's probably the most talented driver on the circuit, I'll say that. And I said his brother was also one of the most talented drivers on the circuit. So that family is great race car drivers there out of the Busch brothers. But what we learned today at the shootout, we definitely learned that the pack racing is back. The fans' calls have been answered by NASCAR. The rule changes are effective. And you can still run a few laps as the tandem without overheating, but you can push, and if there's a few laps to go, it is an option, and that's just the option you'll have to take. You got to throw your temperature of your engine out of the window if you're overheating. So what? The race is on the line. You got to keep pushing and go. And the two-car tandem, although it is a little more effective than the pack racing, it's not that 10-15 mile an hour difference that we had the last few seasons with cars teaming up and just flying around the track. It's only 5-10 miles an hour difference, and it's not as effective, but it is faster, so that's something to look for. But also, something I was looking at, and the announcers were saying, stay off the left rear, stay off the left rear. I mean, it makes sense, but I think these guys were just adapting to something new, because that's always been, even with the two-car tandem last year, if you got on their left rear in the corner, that was something that would spin them out. And the announcers were saying like that's something new this year. I mean, the reduction of the spoiler size adds to that because it makes the back of the car lighter and it wants to float around more. But that's something in the past that you've had to look out for, and it just was amplified by these changes. So I don't think that's really something new there, just something that was worsened by the changes made by NASCAR. But you got to stay on the middle to the right side of that car, and people just got to lift. As Kevin Harvick said, when you got all that speed, some guys are inexperienced. They got to learn to use both pedals in the car. There's two pedals in the car for a reason. And also with the case like in practice yesterday with Tony Stewart and Kurt Busch, or in the race today with Clint Bowyer and Martin Truex Jr. This radio communication thing for NASCAR, I don't think they got it right here. I mean, if a guy's trying to make a move to the outside, the guy behind him is not going to know what he's thinking. I mean, it's just a racing incident then that's kind of an unneeded incident if NASCAR would just let them have multiple radio communication systems and different channels to connect on in waves like that for the drivers to talk to each other. I also think that adds good perspective for the fans, too, watching the race on RaceView or whatever website with the scanners at the track, to be able to listen to the drivers talk to each other. I think that's a unique perspective, instead of just hearing the drivers talking directly to their crew and their spotter. That's definitely something that I think NASCAR could change, but they're probably not going to, because they saw what they wanted to tonight, and that was the pack racing. So, overall, the Bud Shootout tonight, Kyle Busch was the winner. Daytona qualifying starting up here, and we're going to have the duels on Thursday. truck race, nationwide race, and then the Daytona 500 is going to be on Sunday. So I'll have a video up for you previewing that on this channel. Thanks for checking it out.